Welcome to In Focus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. I'm Eric Marsh, Executive Director of Whitewater Community Television. Glad you're able to join us for this edition, where we'll have a conversation starting off with Debra Berry, who is the Wayne County Clerk. Thanks for spending some time with us.
Well, thank you for asking me, Eric. I'm quite honored and humbled to be able to talk to the citizens and let them know about what's going on with our upcoming election.
You know, we have to talk to you. It's election season, but it always seems like it's election season.
I know.
3 out of 4 years we do this. Mm-hmm. But beyond that, let's start with the clerk's office.
Okay.
When it's not election season, which is when we normally talk to you, what do you do? What does the clerk of the county take care of?
Well, I think the biggest thing that the clerk does, of course, is the keeper of all the court records. So we have all of those records. We have to preserve them, and retain those and keep microfilmed of many of the records. We also mark them whether they're restricted, so not for public access. We provide copies to the public. Right now, our file clerks are very busy with the BMV sending folks out because of the Real ID Act. So now people will have to have a star on the back of their driver's license in order to even fly within the United States. So that's coming up in 2012. The Real ID Act was passed in 2011, I believe. And so now people, if their name has changed any time from their birth certificate to the time that they're applying for a driver's license, they have to have a paper trail of how and why that changed. So we have a lot of women coming up and getting their marriage certificate. If they have went through a divorce and their name changed, from what's on the birth certificate to the divorce, they have to have that documentation, and it has to be the raised seal, the clerk's seal stating, that it is an authentic record.
And this is going on their driver's license.
This is going on their driver's when they apply for their new driver's license. So right now we're very, very busy with the BMV sending people in, to get those copies of records. We probably get anywhere from 5 to 25 a day. So it's really a lot of traffic in the clerk's office right now with that.
Okay.
Of course, any new case filings, we put them into our court management system, create a physical file, for that case. Mm-hmm. We do all kinds of criminal and civil cases that is in our courts, and each one is designated by a unique case number, depending on the court that it's filed in.
Okay.
The clerk, I wear a lot of hats.
Sure.
Last year, during the off-election season, we decided to renovate the main clerk's office, and so those renovations went well. We moved temporarily to voters registration since it was a non-election year, so while they did the renovations, turned out really well. A little bit of inconvenience, but, it's like you're inconvenienced for a while, but it was well worth it.
It's like our streets right now.
It is. So that went really well. Took a little more time than we was hoping that it would, but you just have to buckle down and roll with the flow. So we did. It turned out really well. It was worth the wait.
You said that you were able to try to keep the aesthetic of the courthouse, so there were some marble features, I think, that you found.
Yes, we did. We were looking for some files up in the attic, and we found a pallet of old marble slabbing that had been used in the original building of the courthouse that had been removed and stored up in the attic. So we asked permission to use those, to integrate those into our counter design. And we wanted to preserve the historical aspect of the Wayne County Courthouse. We always want to modernize, but we didn't want to take away that historical look.
Sure.
So we integrated that marble into the counter, all around the wall of the counter, and then at each window we created like teller windows. At each window there's a piece of marble from the original courthouse that transactions go across, and we matched up the wood, and it is really it's really a compliment, to the courthouse, keeping that integrity.
Yes. Does it make the flow in your office better when people come in to transact business?
It does. We made the obby just a little little bit larger, so that now instead of just 2 windows, we have 3. We made sure that one was handicap accessible, so when people come in, it's at the level if they're in a wheelchair. And so, there were a lot of codes and things that we had to meet when we did the renovations, but it looks real nice, and a lot of people come in and say, I haven't been here for a while. Wow, this has really changed. So, Buildings and Grounds put in new LED lighting, so it's much brighter. Just looks real nice, real clean and crisp. We used to have wires, taped to the floor and everything, and it was an issue. Now they're all hidden. They run in between the desks. The desks are face to face, and it is real nice workstations for all of the deputy clerks that work there.
Nice.
So, besides doing court records and making copies for the public, personally, I serve on a couple of committees. I serve on the Indiana Supreme Court Records Maintenance Committee. I'm appointed to that. I serve on the Courthouse Security Committee. Also, in our Clerks Association, I serve on the Audit Committee. So, those things are added to not only the duties day to day that the clerk does, but it's a lot. It's a whole lot. We handled nearly $8 million in receipts and disbursements last year. So with child support, most of that is from child support. Our trust account, we take bonds, and it's an in and out thing. We hold the money until the case is resolved, and then we disperse it according to the court order, to the judge's order. So lots of paperwork.
Sure.
Our whole basement is full of court records, old tickets, things that we have to keep until they're microfilmed, and then once they're microfilmed, the state allows us to dispose of those. There's a type of destruction that we have to do, and so we're able to shred all those, have them shredded, and then just have the microfilmed records. So we're moving forward with technology, modernizing it in that way, but there's a lot to do.
This is obviously a busy year, one of 3. Now, you kept saying, since it wasn't an election year, we're back in an election year. We've gone through the primary, and the filing deadline for candidates in the races that we're most familiar with has come and gone. So those folks that weren't challenged in the primary election, or who won their primary election and aren't being challenged in the general, they're basically going to be office holders now, correct?
Yeah. They basically will. I mean, I'm sure it's a great relief for a lot of candidates. Saves a lot of expense, because when you run for an office, there is an expense for your yard signs and billboards. I mean, there's lots of things that candidates do to try to promote themselves in order to win an election. So we probably won't see as many yard signs and those types of things, because it's just not necessary. They will probably put signs up just, so that people will remember that they are on the ballot. It's not a big challenging as far as the local races. We have a couple of opposing candidates. State races, there is a race in several of those.
We've got the District 56 representatives race. We have the Senate race, where there's a couple of people that will be running, and we've got the Wayne County Council District 3, the seat that Pete Zaleski is giving up. That's a contested race.
Yes.
And there was one other that you were telling me just got filed.
The Wayne Township Trustee's Office is a contested race this year. So.
All right. Registration for people who want to vote in the fall election. They can do that now, correct?
They can. Voters registration reopened on May the 22nd after the primary election, and it is open right now. It's easy to register to vote. You're more than welcome to call our office, of course, and you can come in and register there, or you can go to indianavoters.com, and at that site, not only can you register to vote, but you can check your registration to see if you are registered. Additionally, you can see what candidates are there, and you can even see the polling places. So there's a lot of information at indianavoters.com. We have a link to that site on the clerk's website also under voters registration. And registration doesn't end until October the 9th. So at that time, if you're not registered before then, you won't be able to vote in the general election.
So we'll start reminding people. We'll get a sign up on both the community and the government bulletin board reminding people that they can register to vote right now.
Yeah.
And get that done. Municipal elections, something that really didn't come up in the primary that people may not be thinking about. There are a couple of towns in Wayne County where part of their town councils are being elected, and you all are running those.
Yes. Of course, Hagerstown and Fountain City, some of their town seats are up for election. And so with that, we run those with our what we call the county election this year. We have the presidential in the county and then municipal elections. So they have passed resolutions, that their seats are staggered so that, in the municipal election, all of their seats, aren't open and they start with a complete new council if it was to be opposed.
Okay.
So that is the reason some of those, have made the resolution so that part of those expire a different year.
Now, they don't have to have you run their election. As a municipality, they could do it themselves, correct?
In the municipal elections year.
Yes.
But this, if they pass, a resolution for them to be in the county's election year, then they don't have that option. We run it. But in the municipal year, they do have an option. They can run their own elections, or they can have the county run those for them. The only requirement really with that, they have to reimburse, the county for running their election.
Okay.
And then they are required to use our e-poll books because, it is a more secure way to make sure that people who are supposed to be voting is voting, and it doesn't allow people who are not supposed to be voting the ability to come in and vote because the e-poll book catches those.
Have you had a lot of conversations with residents about that? We've been hearing for a couple of years since the last election that there were millions of people who voted illegally in various places and the Russians were hacking and things. Did you get a lot of questions about that for our local election and how that affected us?
We did get a lot of questions. As a matter of fact, Fox News even came and interviewed, myself about that issue. So our e-poll books are integrated on the internet so that we can see if people have voted somewhere else. But our ballots or our votes are never sent over the internet. Our voting machines here are the capability is stored on a card. We do have a paper trail. We don't have a paper ballot. There's a lot of conversation going on about that now. But we do have a paper trail with the type of voting machines that we do internally. So when folks go to the vote centers and vote, then our inspector and one of the judges, all of our inspectors in Indiana are Republicans because our Secretary of State is a Republican. So that's how that's determined. So when they bring that box back that has all those votes on it, that judge's ballot box, they have to come back bipartisan. So the Democrat judge actually brings that box together and they bring it, and then we read those tapes and put those tallies on the tally computer to count them. So a lot of people think, well, now that we're electronic, when the polls close at 6 o'clock, they should have the race counted by 6:15. It's electronic, but that's impossible because it is not sent over the internet. So our inspector and judges has to come from Hagerstown, Cambridge, that's a half hour away where they bring those back. So usually by 7:15, we've got it pretty well wrapped up.
It's been going pretty quickly.
It has, but our ballots are never over the internet, so they can't be hacked. like so many, and I don't know where a lot of that comes from. I know, that at maybe some of the conventions, the party conventions, there was some issues there. But here, locally, it's impossible, for that hacking in that aspect to happen here locally.
Before we let you go, I want to mention that there are actually, now we've mentioned that the candidates that we regularly see on the ballot, their dates have come and gone.
Yes.
There are school board elections, though, that are coming up where
Absolutely.
they have not even reached their point where they can begin filing petitions yet.
Right. The deadline to be a candidate other than school board came and gone July 3rd.
Okay.
And the Libertarian Party has their convention on June the 30th. So after that, they have until July 3rd to come in and put any candidates on the ballot. So now, school board, that for them to file starts on July the 25th. So anyone interested in a school board seat can come in and file after July the 25th, and then that deadline they have to have filed by August the 24th at noon. Our deadlines usually are at noon, and as the state always tells us at convention, noon means noon. So if you come in at 11:55 to file and you get called out in the hall speaking to someone, you come in at 12:01,
You're out of luck.
you're out of luck. That's the deadline. That is it. So that's pretty strictly enforced, and we do have a timestamp machine that, those filings are all timestamped so that it's fair. So noon does mean noon, but they do have till August the 24th
And they have
for
to get a
school
certain
board.
number of signatures on their petition in order to be a candidate?
Yes, they have to file a petition to come in, and of course we confirm a lot of signatures for the state because those state offices also have to have signatures. So school board is a little bit different than regular candidates. There's a few different things, that they put signs up. They have to put up the disclaimer. There's rules, and every candidate who comes in and file, we give them a packet so that they won't miss their campaign finance deadline. School board don't usually do a lot with campaign finance, so they're not as stringent on those things because they don't spend money like other candidates do. There's deadlines for those also, but certainly if someone wants to come in and be a candidate, we want them to know that we provide them with a whole packet of information. They don't have to have a lot of stress about who's going to walk me through this, because it is something that we give them a nice packet and highlight a lot of the dates for them so that they can follow through, and they get a calendar so that they're reminded. So
Will most of the communities have school board races this fall, do you know?
yes, they do. Countywide, each school district, if they have races that are seats that are open that come up, then and the school board's a little confusing for some people. I know the Richmond School Board, we had some seats, and those people that ran 2 years ago, their term doesn't start till the following.
Right.
Yeah, so it's a little confusing but most people who follow school board and are interested in serving on that board, they're really familiar, with what they have to do, and when they come in, their questions, they pretty much already know the answers to a lot of that. So, but those are on the ballot this year.
Anything that I haven't asked you that you need people in this community to know about before we get to the fall right now?
Well, not before we get to the fall, that we've pretty much covered everything.
Okay.
We do have a new vote center location. We had to change from Townsend.
Right.
And we changed it to Mount Olive. We'll continue with that this fall. And just depending on the progress of Townsend Center, when we'll be able to go back there. But for now, that worked out really well. It was a little tight, but really nice people to work with there at Mount Olive, and it went really well. They have great parking, handicap accessible, so that was a good move.
Okay. I know we'll be talking to you again in the fall as the
Absolutely.
election gets closer. Debbie Berry, Wayne County Clerk, thanks for taking some time and being on In Focus.
My pleasure. Thanks, Eric.
Hi, I'm Rachel Hughes, host of The Third Sector. Join me this month and my guests, Rod Waltz and Mike Ballard, representing Quaker Hill Conference Center.
And we're a full-service facility, and we can accommodate about 50 guests for overnight accommodations, and a lot of people don't know that.
The Third Sector airs Thursdays at 8:30 on WETV, Channel 20.
Keep up with local government information and shows with WGTV Online. Go to WCTV.info and click on the WGTV Online button. It's a live stream and video on demand site in one. Click the play button, you'll see whatever's on the air on WGTV Channel 11, or scroll down for videos on demand. Choose whatever meeting or show you'd like to watch. It's easy to stay informed with WGTV Online, a service of Whitewater Community Television.
Hi, I'm Allison Seidel, host of Environmentally Speaking. We hope you'll join us this month when we explore the Cardinal Greenway and all of the outdoor recreation opportunities in Wayne County. Yeah, so we're lucky to have some bike places in town that not only sell bikes, but then can help us be safe with them too. Yeah. Helmets, very important, especially on a trail where you don't know, there might be wildlife that could cross at a moment. Join us on Wednesday evenings at 6:30 p.m. on WGTV Channel 11.
Hi, I'm Roxy Deer, the Director of Programs and Events for the Wayne County Area Chamber of Commerce. This month, I will be hosting the Chamber Chat, where we will talk with Chancellor Kathy Cruiser-Ribe and talking about new member outreach, and we'll also be announcing the new School is Cool coordinator. We'll also get our look ahead with Ed and hear about upcoming Wayne County weekends. Watch Chamber Chat on Tuesdays at 8 p.m. on WETV Channel 20.
Welcome back to In Focus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. I'm Eric Marsh, Executive Director of Whitewater Community Television. Glad you're able to join us for this conversation with In Focus. We've changed location. We are no longer in the county building. We are on the stage in Vivian Auditorium at Indiana University East, where we've just heard, can I say this in the same sentence? We're in Indiana University East, and I'm talking with two people from Purdue. I think I'm going to get in trouble. They are from the Purdue Center for Regional Development, Bo Blue and Michael Wilcox. Thank you both for spending some time with me today.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
First of all, let's start by what is the Center for Regional Development?
Well, the Purdue Center for Regional Development is a center that was established in 2005. Express purpose is to really help work with regional collaborations or regional entities to help them work more effectively, to help them identify what some of their major economic strengths are, and try to find ways to invest in those strengths in a much more effective way.
The whole regional idea has continued to grow here in the state of Indiana to the point where the state more and more is beginning to incentivize areas to work in regions. Have you seen that work effectively for the most part as you've gone around and started working with various areas?
Absolutely. I mean, I think there are some regions that are continuing to struggle, but we've been working with several of them. They're doing some phenomenal work. We have 15 regions that are part of the Indiana Association of Regional Council. We have other metropolitan planning organizations. We have a variety of different districts or regions that think and act regionally, and many of them are doing a great job, and we're there to help support them and find any way we can to help them do their job better.
Out of curiosity, are there some factors that you're seeing that make the regional work in some areas more successful than in others?
All right. Do you want me to say it, or Michael?
Well, we'll see if we agree.
We agree, yeah.
I would say the secret to success as far as the regions are concerned is to not maintain the status quo. And we've had several regions come to us, or long-standing regions have been around since the 1970s, and they realize that they have been doing the same thing kind of every year in and out. And they wanted to change things up. And one of the things that they really had to change was garnering buy-in from all of the communities that are within the region and trying to enhance their ability to collaborate, if you will. Instead of it being sort of the connected few, if you will, in the region, it winds up being a far more community-driven type process. And so I think through PCRD and through our activities with Purdue Extension, we've really been trying to foster that capacity to collaborate and really generate buy-in buy-in amongst community members. And so the regions aren't just sort of selfishly acting for themselves, but they're actually serving as a conduit through which the communities can collectively work together. And I think that paradigm shift amongst the regions here in Indiana,
Absolutely.
those that have been successful, have really kind of caught that and that idea and really move forward with it in an honest way.
And I agree. And the other thing we've tried to do through our work, both Purdue Extension and PCRD, is to try to bring better data, better information to these decision makers. And I think what we've been struck by when we began conversations with a lot of regions is that their regional plan was nothing more than each county giving a wish list about what they would like to do in terms of infrastructure, in terms of workforce, housing, whatever the case may be. Mm-hmm. And what we've helped them do is to look at what are your regional strengths that go above just a county, but all the mix of counties together. It's amazing what you find in terms of some real strengths you have when you begin to look at the whole as opposed to the parts. And we've been able to bring data to help them understand, here's where you have some major strength economically, where in fact you have competitiveness vis-a-vis the whole nation. And that opens their eyes to saying what the possibilities are for us to really grow our economy.
And that's the economic driver is probably the biggest thing that you're seeing in terms of, I assume, why these regions are really working together. The economies in certain regions are very much tied together, and we've seen that obviously here in East Central Indiana.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I'd say the other thing too, there's inducements because they're realizing we got to do with this together. There's also some investments coming from the state and from the federal government that are really urging these counties to begin to think regionally. We have the Stellar Communities program out of the Office of Community and Rural Affairs that has now gone to a regional focus. We've had the Regional Cities Initiative that was launched 2-3 years ago, and that was designed to help counties work in a cohesive way as a region. We've had programs from the USDA Rural Development and from the Housing and Urban Development. A lot of federal agencies are trying to get investments to be made more on a regional level. So there's this push and pull going at both ends, both locally and in the state and the federal government.
Then that really underscores the importance of planning, because it's one thing to sort of pretend like we're going to work as a region. There's another to actually show that that cohesiveness exists, and we've developed a plan that takes the best of all the different counties and begins to grow that connective tissue across the county so you can actually operate as a region. And I do agree with Bo 100% that oftentimes it's the data as well as the conversation around the data and recognizing that, yes, everyone has their strengths and their weaknesses, but collectively we're going to be stronger than trying to operate and compete separately. And for far too long, I would argue the regions here in Indiana and the counties here in Indiana have been competing against one another instead of collectively working together for the greater good of the residents in their community and in their region. And so fostering this idea of collaborativeness and helping them understand how to go about doing that, where virtually everyone can win versus there's a winner and a loser. Hey, we attracted this plant here and you didn't get it kind of thing. We're trying to leave that old school mentality behind and recognize that we've got commuting patterns, we have interrelatedness, our culture is interrelated, our social networks. Yes, we play each other in basketball, right, or we play football against one another, but we need to collectively celebrate that that's an opportunity for us to come together as a community. And in this day and age where there's so much divisiveness across the entire nation, it's heartening to me to see regions coming together and coalescing around issues that they can agree upon, and economic development is oftentimes one of them where everyone can kind of agree. They might not agree on how you get there, but they can all agree that they want everyone to have an opportunity to succeed.
It's going to be even a harder conversation because not only counties fighting against each other, but sometimes you've got cities within counties fighting against each other. So to spread that out over a larger area, that had to have created some interesting conversation.
Right, for sure. And we've got another program that we've been working with, again, with the Office of Community and Rural Affairs called the Hometown Collaboration Initiative, what we call HCI. HCI has been instrumental in getting communities within a county to talk to one another. In some cases, it was just a community, but we have cases where counties have worked, a county has worked together amongst all the different municipalities, even unincorporated areas, and they began to build this trusting relationship. And to us, that's the very foundation of thinking regionally, because when you begin to think as a county and you're cohesive, then that becomes the ingredient for how we come to a regional conversation. And again, it takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. We've got to begin to build trust with one another. And like Michael said, that happens by thinking, acting, debating, disagreeing, but ultimately you come to an agreement about how you want to move forward as a region. And trust is critical.
Yeah, trust is the key ingredient. Like HCI, the Hometown Collaboration Initiative, Rush County was a participant in that program. They were in the first phase of the program, and I'd like to think that they were quite successful in it. It resulted in Rush County Biz, the website for small business in Rush County. It resulted in John McCain bolstering his business retention and expansion program. But the thing that I really appreciated was the Rush County Biz website that they put together. It was focused on small business, but they didn't just focus on Rushville. They focused on small businesses that are found throughout the county. Sometimes when there's a disparity, when you have this one large town and then the county is kind of spread out, the population density is much less everywhere around. It's easy to focus your energies on Richmond or focus your energies on Connorsville or focus your energies on Rushville. And we were very deliberate in making sure that all of the communities in Rush County were accounted for. And we even went to the bold move of moving our meeting around the county so we weren't just meeting all the time, in John's office and in one place. And that worked for Stronger Economies Together as well. It was very easy for us to meet in Richmond and get everyone to come sort of the central location. And we finally put a halt to it and we started meeting in all the counties, and we wound up meeting in every single county, and it made a world of difference trying to generate that necessary cohesiveness amongst the group that was writing their high quality plan for the Eastern Indiana Regional Planning Commission.
You're watching In Focus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. I'm Eric Marsh, Executive Director. We're speaking with Bo Blue, Michael Wilcox from the Center for Regional Development at Purdue. The reason we're here is you just presented a housing study, and actually it was even more than that, but when the first conversation began, it was going to be a housing study for the Eastern Indiana Regional Planning Commission. Give us a little bit of background of how that came about, and just touch really quickly on some of the high points that you got from that.
Sure, be glad to. Again, as we said earlier, the impetus originally was a Strong Economies Together program in which the Eastern Indiana Regional Planning Commission created what we call a high quality regional plan. And in there, it was not only did we identify the major economic drivers, but we began to look at what are the quality of life things that need to be in place to make this a really attractive place for people to live, work, and play. And housing was one of them that came up, that they were really concerned about the quality of housing, the diversity of housing, whether we're meeting the needs of our various populations. And that was what really was the impetus, so that Jeff came to us and said, okay, housing was one of the top issues in terms of quality of life that we had to deal with. Can you help us delve into this, help us understand better the DNA of what's going on in the housing arena?
Mm-hmm. As you began to do that study, and we're going to show that full presentation probably next week here on WCTV, so be looking for that. It will also be available on WGTV Online, our video on demand site. But before people have a chance to really see that, real quickly, a couple of the high points. We've got some older stock here, and we may not have the type of housing that the younger generation is looking for. Talk a little bit about the age of the housing in the entire region that we're dealing with.
Overall, half of the housing in the region was built prior to 1960. And only a small fraction has been built after 2000. So you have this kind of disparity between older homes as well as very limited new homes. Even on rental property, we're talking about almost half of it has been built prior to 1960. And what we know is that people who are younger today, that's not the kind of housing that's going to be attractive to them. Mm-hmm. Michael had talked about a report that just literally came out a couple days ago from the Urban Institute that basically said that millennials are delaying buying homes, they're delaying getting married, and therefore this is having a real impact on homes being purchased, that they're buying it later than my generation did, or his generation did, Michael's generation. They're just delaying home buying, and we think part of it is because if the stock, it's really hard to buy a home if it's really old. Millennials don't want to buy an older home. Yeah. And in addition, a lot of them are very mobile. They don't want to be necessarily rooted in having a home. if they have a rental, they're much easier able to move from place to place. But Michael, I know, has some observation on that too.
One of the things that really struck me, and I tried to underscore this during the presentation today, was in 2000, 5% of the population of the region the household income was $100,000 or more in 2016 dollars. And we see now that 11% of the region households are making $100,000 or more. And while that sounds fantastic, what it really is showing is that there's a bimodal distribution here where you have a bunch of people that live here that make more modest incomes at the household level, and then you've got a group of individuals that make a substantial living, $100,000 or more, if you will. And when we did this, the survey, we wound up surveying over 2,000 people throughout the entire region. What we found is there was a whole group of people demanding housing that falls under $100,000 for a home. There's a high demand for that, and there's no supply whatsoever. And then it's interesting in the data, it literally 0 people said they wanted a house between $200,000 and $300,000, but there was a group of people that wanted a house at $300,000 or more. And there's very few of those homes available. And so you wind up having this bimodal distribution of income. You wind up having demand for 2 completely different types of housing stock, and neither of them are available in the community. The developers look at the situation and they say, we see the opportunity in the $300,000 homes because we can build a margin into that. And then to the detriment of the people seeking homes at $100,000 and less, it's very difficult for them to find anything because, quite honestly, given the way prices are right now, material costs, public policy, there's a wide variety of issues, infrastructure limitations, so on and so forth, it's virtually impossible to build a home for less than $100,000. And so we have a situation here in this region, and it's not uncommon across the state of Indiana, but here in this region where you've got quite a bit of unmet demand where people would like to purchase a home within their affordable range, which might be $50,000 to $100,000, and there's very, very little supply. And then on the other end, you've got people on the higher end that are seeking a home perhaps in the $300,000 range, and they may not exist either because it's only maybe 50 households that are looking for that, and maybe there's land availability issues, or there isn't land available proximate to where these folks work per se, or they choose to live elsewhere because of the amenities afforded to them. We heard stories where there's doctors that drive in from Indy every day to work at the great medical institutions that you have in the region because they want to have the big city amenities of Indianapolis. And we've been working here long enough. We've been coming and going from this region for the last 4 or 5 years. One of the things that I really appreciate are the amenities that are here. Now, they might not be big city Indy amenities, but you guys have some what I would call big city amenities here. You've got great higher education institutions. You have fantastic recreational opportunities, cultural opportunities. You're covered up in infrastructure. You can move around relatively easily across the 5 different counties. I think opportunities abound if you are looking in the right place. But there's some challenges as well.
Right. What's driving you is the economics. I noticed that you mentioned poverty up in this area from 10.1% to 16.3%, which may also cause why you have those people that are looking for that housing under.
And you have a quarter of your 18 and unders that are living in poverty now. And so when it comes time to leave the nest after they turn 18, do they want to remain where they are currently in poverty, or do they want to seek opportunity elsewhere? And so we did talk about the population loss that has occurred here in this region. It's become destabilized here, but over in the recent history since 2000, we've lost a considerable amount of population. A lot of that is due to economics, due to the Great Recession and so forth. But
and to add to that, one of the figures we shared with the group today is the cost burden figure, and that is how, for those who are renting, how many of them have a burden in terms of being able to pay the cost of their rent. And anybody who pays over 30% of their income for rental property is really cost burden. And that data here that's somewhat discouraging. It's probably about somewhere around 50%, if I remember well. About half of them are cost burden. They're actually paying more out of their income than they can probably afford. So it could all be tied to this higher poverty. It could be based upon the number of people who are making a lower income due to their jobs. It's just a whole host of things. But clearly, that's another indication that there is an issue here with regard to the ability to pay for rental properties given the kind of income you're making.
Yeah, we saw median income go down. We saw average earnings go up, but that's average earnings per worker, if you will. But the fact that the median income is going down, this region has what we call asset limited, income constrained, employed individuals here. They're hardworking.
Wow, that's a mouthful.
It is. But the United Way here in Indiana has been leading the way and trying to focus energy on highlighting the asset limited, income constrained, employed population here in Indiana, where they're hardworking Americans that are doing the best they can, but because of their constrained income and assets, if they're paying over 30% of what they do make towards just having a roof over their heads, it doesn't leave much else for them to eat, as well as disposable income, affording their children the opportunities they would like to afford them. And it came out in the data looking at the distribution of married versus single people with children, and there's a disproportionate number of women that have children. They're working, but they are challenged to find housing that they can afford to put a roof over their children's heads, and so.
Right. So one of the things I know that the people who were at our meeting today, the presentation, I think they were hoping we would come with the magic bullet, the silver bullet, and we said, really,
everybody's looking for answers.
And that's appropriate. I mean, they would want to ask us what we think should be the next steps, and what we said is that this is really yours now. You have to take ownership of how you address these multitude of issues we've raised. Our data help provide some input, some guidance, a framework to have that discussion, but ultimately the solutions have to be locally driven. They have to be driven by the region, people, local leaders, local government officials, the nonprofits, the faith-based, the foundations. The whole set of players have to be at the table discussing these issues and finding out what's the right solutions for us. It's not a one-size-fits-all. We have to really make it tailored to the unique opportunities that exist here. And that's what we said. We're here. We're willing to come back. We want to work with you. But ultimately, you're the driver of the solutions, not us.
What were some of the positives that came out? I don't want this to sound like everything is horrible here, because I don't believe that by any stretch of the imagination.
And nor do we.
Like you mentioned, I think there are some great amenities here. I think they're doing some of the work on some of the infrastructure that needs to be done here. But as you looked at all of the data, and you've obviously looked at this entire region, and this is not just Richmond, Wayne County, but this is a 5-county area that's part of this. What does East Central Indiana have as far as things that make them a strong place that they can build on?
Let me just say, I'll talk about the housing. We talked earlier about housing being old. Well, is that a negative or is that a positive? It's a negative if it gets to be dilapidated and nobody's paying attention to it, but it's a phenomenal resource in terms of the history of your region. So if you turn that around and say, no, what we should be doing is how can we restore, how can we make this history of our region come back alive? And so that's an asset. It's there to be improved and hopefully to become a great home or rental property for some family or some people who are not married, but non-family people. But just think about that. It's an asset. These are really phenomenal historical buildings that could become, in some places, have become almost like the centerpiece of renewing or reinvigorating a community.
The thing I'm most excited about, and some of this happened after the meeting was over, I got to talk to some folks that are involved in some community development efforts here in Wayne County, and I've been actively involved with some community development efforts going on in Rush County as well as in Fayette County, especially Fayette. The thing that really excites me, again, we've been coming here for 5 years, and 5 years ago what led us to come here was sort of the bad news that was being generated out of the region, and so we came in with, okay, we've got programs that might be able to help this region move forward. And what I've seen, the transformation I've seen since starting to come here 4 or 5 years ago to the present day, is the number of individuals that are now actively working towards making this region or helping this region realize its potential. And that's really, really exciting that people are willing to work together and realize these visions. The other thing, and we're sitting at one of the assets right now, is the fact that you guys have higher education here, like other, what I'll call a more rural region, they don't have. I mean, the fact that you've got an Earlham here, the fact that you've got an IU East here, the fact that you've got an Ivy Tech here, the fact that you've got Purdue Polytech here, just those assets, higher education assets alone that I just named off that, you know, I can see from sitting here is a huge opportunity for you because we can collaborate with them. They have faculty and staff and students that bring a vibrancy to this region that we don't necessarily see in other regions. We have innovative thinking that's coming out of here. We have research, we have education. One of the things that we heard today was the fact that the biomedical sector is one of your key industry clusters. We found this 3 years ago when we started working with the IRPC and working on their high quality plan. That's a key industry sector. We also saw it's one of the sectors that you're having the hardest time hiring for. We also saw that the majority of people that are hired into that sector are female. And I talked to some of the folks afterwards, and they said, you know, we really, really struggle educating our women that are born and raised here to go into STEM-related fields and then to find work here in the region. They oftentimes may go to school elsewhere and they don't necessarily choose to return, and so we're losing their potential, if you will. And they don't have to be female, but by and large the occupations we're looking at are female dominated. How do we get the young ladies, the girls here in this community, this region, excited about science, technology, engineering, and math? And how do we help that translate into getting the requisite education experience they need and then connecting them with the jobs? We saw in the data today, the jobs are there. It's the people aren't there to go ahead and take those jobs.
How do you convince people of that? Because if you've spent time in this area because I've recorded a couple of presentations that you've made, but there's a belief that there are no jobs here in Wayne County above fast food, $10 an hour. You're saying, no, that's not the case. How does any area that has been as depressed and hard hit as this one begin to turn that message around from the inside? Have you seen that successfully take place anywhere else in any of the regions that you've worked in?
Well, I mean, we've worked in the Northeast area that's been thriving. We've done a lot of work in the Southwest region of the state, and they have put a plan, and they're making some phenomenal progress. The city of Jasper is one place we've worked with. That community is going gangbusters. Visionary leadership, recognizing that the future of our county, our community rests with our ability to retain and attract talent, and they're doing it. I mean, it's just there are different parts of the state that are doing a great job. Other parts are struggling with the very same issues we talked about today. You know, one thing I want to add about some of the assets on the education side, we were able to show that the number of people with a college education or more has grown. The issue is how do we keep them? You got 20% of the people who have some college, and what we're talking about is how do we make sure that we move them from a some college to an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree. So how do we incentivize? How do we help people that are in that category? 1 out of 5 adults, 25 and over, have some college. To be able to attract and at least compete for the jobs of the future that pay much better, we got to move them into the completion stage. And I think that's something that IU, East, Ivy Tech, others can really play a key role.
Obviously, Ivy Tech statewide has been pushing that.
Big issue, Ivy Tech. The other one I want to say is an asset is that when Michael and I and other people from PCRD started working in this region, the Eastern Indiana Regional Planning Commission was a new idea. It wasn't even it wasn't really formal yet. We've been able to make that into a formal. Everybody working together has created this as a formal regional entity. We've seen a sense of distrust initially move into an area where we have people working and being energized together. We see a phenomenal growth in the leadership and the inclusivity of people at the table. I think Michael agreed. This buy-in to this regional concept and the trust has really improved. This is a phenomenal asset that can be the springboard for phenomenal things being done over the long term. So this really, again, the leadership has really, really improved, and the willingness and to move together as a region, I think, has made some quantum leaps forward.
If I might add, you ask about how can we get I guess I took it to be messaging out there. How do we convince people that there are opportunities
How
here.
do we talk to our people about what actually
and
exists?
some of it does just come down to messaging. I see in the years that I've worked, and Bo has as well, that oftentimes the community or region needs to have a sense of self-worth to start with. And I see that here. People are proud to be from this region, and they ought to be proud to be from this region. But they also need to not be blind about it. They need to recognize the opportunities that are here. And I think part of that needs to be done not only through the messaging to help people understand that the opportunity is here, but it needs to be done through the data, if you will. Bo mentioned the Northeast, and Indranil and I and a student of ours is working on a project right now where we're looking at economic diversity throughout the state. And there are particular counties that all their eggs are in a single basket, whether it be motor vehicle, whether it be RVs, whether it be ag, whatever it is. Their entire economy is one egg in this basket, if you will. And what we're finding is the Northeast is one of those places where there's quite a lack of diversity in the types of firms that are there because they're so heavily vested in advanced manufacturing. And it had a destabilizing effect during the recession. They wound up getting hit by the recession, pretty badly. There were some devastating losses up in the Northeast, just like there were here in the EIRPC. Mm-hmm. But because of the data, and they've seen it in the data, they're starting to turn things around, and the programming that they're doing is focused in and around economic diversity and trying to diversify their economies. And so in the same way here, through the EIRPC plan, they recognize two things. In the data that we helped generate for them, they recognize, one, that you guys have a particular skill and aptitude in health services here, Reed being part and parcel of that, as well as the other hospitals and other organizations and firms that you have here. There's that. We know that you have the ability to train a workforce. And now really the heavy lifting comes in is to try to tie all that together, to recognize that biomedical is a key component to your economy, that you've got the ability to train up people to take those jobs, but then also recognize there's a third piece there of what sort of drives your economy. And a lot of the conversation is typically around the largest of firms. And yes, the largest of firms are important. But what's truly important, and we showed in the data today, if you're talking about job generation, if you're trying to stave off job losses, if you're trying to expand the jobs here, it really comes down to entrepreneurship, and it comes down to business retention and expansion. Virtually all of your jobs and the job generation that's occurred here post-recession has been driven by the smallest of your businesses, those businesses that have 2 to 9 employees and 10 to 99 employees. And far too often, a lot of people, it's the squirrel thing, and they look this way. We are attracted to those large firms that promise to bring 200 jobs or 400 jobs or 500 jobs. They're important. They're important, and yes, that is the hope. But we know, and we showed in the data today, that virtually all your job creation, only 200 jobs over a 7-year period were created by having a firm come in. That's net, because not only did you have firms come in, you had firms leaving. And what really created the bulk of the jobs that came into this area were the smallest of firms that came in, probably unrecognized. No one was cutting any ribbons or anything like that, but those opportunities came into play. So if we can change mindsets on what's creating jobs here, if we can change mindsets on what jobs are here, and if we can position our young people to take those jobs or retrain the people that are getting back into the workforce, we can hit a home run here in this region and continue to move it in the direction that it's already moving, as we see as educational attainment go up, the number of jobs go up, and your population stabilize.
Gentlemen, we have to cut it off there. I hope I have a chance to sit down with you again when you come back into this area. Yeah. Bo Blue, Michael Wilcox, thank you very much for spending some time with us.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
We'll be back with In Focus in just a moment.
Hi, I'm Sherry Harlan, program host for Reeves IU. Join us on our next episode when we'll have from the Reed Foundation, Justin Burkhart and Sarah Wise, Miracle Baker from the Ginkgo Boutique, and Shara Short, Manager of Volunteer Services at Reed Health. Join us Thursdays at 8 o'clock, WETV, Channel 20.
I'm Al Bledsoe.
And I'm Ron Chappelle, chaplain for Vietnam Veterans Post 777. Our guests on our next program is Harold Evans and Gary Franklin, both who have just exceptional knowledge about the Huey that we're trying to bring to Richmond.
We had this opportunity to get a Huey, so it was pretty clear cut. Let's go for it.
Watch us on WETV Channel 20 at 8 p.m. Monday evening.
Thanks for watching this week's edition of In Focus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. Here's some of the things that are taking place around the community over the next week or so. Morrison Reeves Library is having events for preschool and elementary age children. No need to register. These things happen Friday, Saturday, and Mondays. Check out mrlinfo.org for more information, or the phone number is on the screen. Getting close to back to school time, and there are a couple of events taking place that will help collect school supplies for students that will be going on. One is Tools for Schools. That supply drive is going on through August 10th at Reed Health. Donations can be dropped off at Reed Health in the red cart near the Ginkgo Boutique. And also, Tools for Schools Night at the Richmond Jazz is taking place Saturday the 28th. That's also an evening when the Wayne County Chamber of Commerce will be there. So check that out if you're going to the game. Take some school supplies along. CISWayneco.org if you want more information. Coming up this Saturday is the Run with the Wolves 5K. Registration begins at 7. The 5K starts at 8. The Run with the Rufus 1K is at 9:05. Check out iue.edu/5K for more information. Human trafficking training sessions are going on for the community on Monday the 23rd in Vivian Auditorium at Whitewater Hall. 973-8200 will provide you with more information if you're interested in participating in those training sessions. Vacation Bible School at Mount Olive is going to be taking place. They're offering classes from kindergarten through adults from the 23rd through the 27th. Call 966-5152 for more information. We'll be back next week with another edition of In Focus on Whitewater Community Television, WGTV Channel 11. Look for replays on the air as well as on WGTV Online. And audio replays can be found on G1013 and ESPN Radio 100.9. Look for those. Thanks for watching In Focus. See you next week.